on anyway. So it gives me great pleasure to welcome to the stage. Please give a very, very warm welcome to Helen Davies. Thanks very much.
Can everyone hear me okay there? Yeah, I'm just going to check. Do I just tell you next slide, or shall I try a clicker? Oh, this one. Right, okay, cool. Great. So, that's me. I'm Helen Davies, and which kind of makes me anonymous in Wales, because that's literally half of Wales. Very good for Facebook anonymity too. I am also the founder of something called Practical Wisdom. It's a not-for-profit organisation that supports neurodivergent adults. It's something that I set up during COVID because I was bored. No, but it's because I wanted to do something different, so that's what I decided to do. I relate quite a lot to some of, the earlier speaker. I didn't get into MIT, though, but I did get into the NHS, and I only got into the NHS because I did an entrance test. And the only reason why I got good grades on the entrance test is because me and my mate Murphy were sat on the back of a bus. He had an IQ book. And I went, oh, that's good. And he was like, oh, yeah. And I got really scores. Bet you can't get high scores. I'm like, fine. Game on. So that's what I did all weekend, because I ADHD, got hyper-focused. Didn't know had ADHD back then. And it turns out on the Monday, on the nursing exams that I literally did for a laugh, I actually got in. And I was like, oh. I mean, I wasn't too upset, because I was really square peg, round hole at home. They're a very nice Middle England family. I love them lots, but I'm fucking gay as they come. And just didn't really work for my dad from the Welsh Valleys, really. He tried. The shock was quite hilarious every so often. And so I was like, oh, well, I can leave home. I can put a bit of money in my pocket and travel the world. That was the dream back then. And that's not too bad, because I've now been a nurse for 35 years. So, yeah, it works out all right sometimes. Next slide, please. Oh, I'll try this. Hold on. Yay. So what do I do? Apart from when I'm nursing, I do public speaking. I absolutely love it, because I love speaking to everyone, and I love that moment. I can see it in your eyes when there's like an aha moment, that I can help raise awareness about different things, and hopefully give a little bit of empowerment or a little bit of advice that you think, oh, I'm going to give that a go. That's going to be really helpful. So it lights me up to make a difference, hence the nursing, but also hence Practical Wisdom, and which is why it's a not-for-profit. I call myself a neurodiversity expert. I have to say that took a long time to feel able to say that, because my not good enough inside my head was telling me, why would I claim that? Anyone else sometimes worry they're not good enough, or is it just me by myself on the stage? No pressure. And it's sometimes that voice in your head can be terrible. But I managed to overcome it and actually realised, turns out I did know quite a lot about neurodiversity, and I actually have been an expert for a number of years. I also talk about queer and transgender awareness. I work in the NHS addressing health inequalities in Sussex and in Brighton. I also talk about trauma-informed approach at work and play. I've got an absolutely gorgeous 11-year-old. He's adopted. Trauma-informed approach is actually very important to me and my family. But I also know it can make a difference, not just for my son, but for a lot of other kids who can get misunderstood. And it can make a massive difference to when those young kids grow up and get misunderstood. So there's lots you can do about there. So that's something I'm also passionate about. In terms of Practical Wisdom, we co-create evidence-based online courses. I'm a health geek. That's why it has to be evidence-based. I want to know it makes a difference. Otherwise, what's the point? And I also support organisations about neurodiversity and being inclusive, and also to get the best out of everybody. because that's really important to me, is that we get out the best out of everyone, and that it's a neurodiverse and, in fact, a diverse, friendly workplace where we can get the best out of everyone. And I say organisations as well, because it's the same for clubs. We all want an equal chance to enjoy those sports or clubs or whatever it is we do. It's not just about workplace. And also I deliver workshops. So the first thing, what I wanted to talk about neurodiversity. Now, to be honest, I've got an audience here who probably know a little bit more than your average bear. So do bear with me if I'm repeating some things that you already know. So it's diversity. Literally, it's about difference. It's about variety, unique, and change from the average. And I have to say, being average is massively overrated. I blame their parents, and I'm actually quite glad to be diverse. Neuro is all about the brain and systems, and you can see why neurodiversity is about how our brain works a bit differently to the average person. Now, what is something I'm working on, but it's just in development. For me, it's not just about the brain working differently, because I've noticed, and it's very common, that actually we might have sometimes some vitamin deficits. We might have weak cores, or we might have tight necks that can actually, do you know, a tight neck can actually make your ADHD symptoms worse. So there's actually physical things that can make a difference, that it's not just about your brain. And I think that's a little bit antiquated. And obviously it can cover a whole range of conditions, which is about how we all work out the world and how we see the world. Now, you'll notice this is a slide. I'm going to be updating it, but for now, what I really like about this slide is actually how it overlaps and how you can actually see the various things. But also, at least 15% of people in the UK are neurodiverse. In fact, some people would say it's higher. So if you are one of those people, you're in very good company, because 15% is a hell of a lot. So the other thing to say is, like, if you look at this and you identify with this, I don't know, some people have a main diagnosis that could be ADHD, dyslexia, or autism. So many people that I speak to these days have an element of neurospiciness that is across the range. Because actually, you might have a diagnosis for one and not quite meet the diagnosis criteria for something else, but it doesn't mean that you don't have those traits. So I have ADHD, I also have dyslexia. I would put money that I have dyspraxia, although I don't actually have the diagnosis, and I definitely have autistic traits as well. But in all this awareness, I'm 53, when I was a kid at school, was like, I just got put in remedial classes too. That was it. And it's like, thanks, I never needed more maths and English. What I needed was the key to unlock my brain. And that's what all of us are bloody fantastic. And what we need is to unlock our own potentials. We don't have to be like everybody else. So when you look at dyscalculia, so that's the number one, that's all about numbers and difficult concepts and calculations. Now, I definitely have a trait, but I'm also dyslexic. So I once did this spreadsheet about working out how much money we would save from something called admission avoidance for hospitals, because I worked in commissioning for a while. Unfortunately, I did put the dot in the wrong place. Turns out we weren't going to save out millions. Unfortunately, we found that about 6 months after we told the world we would. Slightly awkward. Then if you've got, obviously, dyspraxia, that's about... It's not just about dropping things. It's about planning. It's about movements. It's about coordination, practical tasks, as well as tackling the balance, poor spatial awareness, and muscle tone. Well, I can guarantee you my cousin has literally all this. If he had stood under a bus stop, it would collapse on him. So that's where that is. And then you can see where that overlaps with the autism spectrum disorder. You can see that actually what also overlaps is about being over and under sensitive to light, noise and touch and temperature. Anyone here got some sensory issues? Yeah. That chewing noise, oh my God. I literally I can't date someone who's going to chew and eat with their mouth open. I'm really sorry. It's not happening. I just can't cope with it. And I didn't even know that was a thing. And now I'm like, oh, it is. But it's still no. Speech and language difficulties. Now, this isn't on the slide about developmental language disorders, and that's what I want to update, because it also need to update and put OCD. My son has a developmental language disorder, and I can really see the synergies between some of his difficulties and mine as a dyslexic as well, in accessing language, kind of trying to work it out, and then trying to say it in the right way. And I didn't realise how difficult it was for me until I sat there. I deliberately don't read out loud, and it's because I can't read out loud very well. And I didn't realise until I'm reading like a 5-year-old book thinking, why am I finding that difficult? You know, and it's because I naturally gravitated to things where I didn't have to do that. But speech and language difficulties are also part of the overlap as well. And obviously here, everyone probably knows a lot more than myself about autism and the social communication problems, obviously the obsessive interests, difference in imagination. And actually with ADHD, there's a lot of overlap because we can get proper obsessive. The ADHD folk could get hyper-focus. And luckily I do remember to feed my child, which is always good. You have Tourette's syndrome, which my son has, about verbal and physical tics. And I didn't know too much about it. And he'll have a cough that sounds like a sneeze, weirdly. And sometimes he'll have a little twitch. And I started asking him, I was like, why is that starting? Are you feeling nervous, love? Because sometimes if he's anxious, it'll get worse. And other times he's doing it because it just makes him feel more comfortable. And not much, I don't think, is talked about that. We like the popular ones, don't we? Autism, dyslexia, ADHD. We seem to leave all the other spices out, and I don't think that's right either. So then, obviously, we have ADHD, and not everybody has the H, so we're not all hyperactive. I am. But so that's about being impulsive. Temper outbursts, anger is an issue. I wish it wasn't. Now, here's the thing. See, read this. Temperament, hyperactive, low frustration, easily distracted over others and focus. And also, commonly, rejection sensitivity order. So I thought being sensitive and your heart on your sleeve, late for everything, pretty much, was actually being Macedonian. Because you see, I'm half Macedonian. So I didn't realise until my 50s, when someone went, that's the ADHD trait. I went, uh-huh. On the third time he said that, I was like, oh, okay. And I looked it up and I went, that makes so much more sense. So it turns out there's a crossover, and should be there, Macedonia with ADHD. Lack of concentration and distractibility can be a thing, and that overlaps again with the dyslexia, difficulty with words, reading, writing, spelling, speaking, listening, preference for non-linear thought. Oh, God, yes. When I go to work, if you just give me a list in a little row, it will literally drive me nuts. Because I don't think like that. This is why I'm not an operational manager. This is why I love A&E. Emergency care is my specialty, because if I'm going to do the same thing every day, kill me now. So that's that. Does that make sense? Any surprises on that, or anything you would like to ask? You can talk to me. It can be a whole together thing. So, if there's any questions, please just pop up your hand. Yeah? Yes. Oh, that was a bit louder than I was expecting. Sorry to the sensory people at the back. So, yeah, you can, because you can have any of these. So to meet a diagnosis, to win that little label, you have to hit a certain amount of traits, and then you win that lucky prize. However, you might still have half of that and still think it's a bit shit, thank you very much, and actually not win the prize but be still struggling, which is why practical wisdom is about supporting people with their traits and where they're at. We do not care if you have a diagnosis, we will sympathise with you, but it's not about that. It's about what is it you're struggling with and what can we help you with. And I think the trouble with hanging on to antiquated view of labels means it helps for us to herd together because it's lovely to see you all. But it doesn't, I think, help describe everything. And I think from a diagnosis perspective, I imagine at some point in the future, they'll just go for a neurodiversity diagnosis. But that might take a little while, but I could see it going there. Interesting fact, turns out I do not have a dyslexia diagnosis myself. I did think most of my life I did, and I self-diagnosed. And then I went and played golf. I'm not really natural with balls because I go one way, they go the other. It's a bit unfortunate. I'm very good at shouting 4 on the golf course. That means duck for those who don't play golf. And I did this course, and it turns out I could actually hit the thing. It was an introductory course, and I was proper surprised, and I did really well. And then there was one, like the last hole we were doing, and people stood around, they were all watching me while I fell apart. I couldn't hit that thing for toffee. And I was like, oh, that's my anxiety, not a disability. And I didn't know the difference. And I went back to my mum. I went, Mum, do you know when I was a kid and I had trouble with buttons and zips and everything? Was it from a young age? She went, what? You know, the trouble with the zips and that. And she went, you never had any. I went, sorry? Well, I must have, because, you know, I've got dyslexia. I'm not very good at ball sports. She went, no, no problems. And your zips were fine too. Your dad was a bit hard on you, though. I went, what do you mean? She went, we did expect high things, and he was an avid sportsman. He was very, very good. He had all these trophies. And then I remembered there was this moment when my dad said to me, and I said, oh, you teach me tennis? He went, no, I'm not going to teach you tennis. I was like, oh, that's a bit harsh. But he later said, about 40 years later, when I said I'd done this golf course, I said, oh, I did golf course. He went, I'm not going to teach you. I went, I'm not asking you, that's why I've got the lessons, isn't it? And he went, no, because I'm not very good at teaching. I was like, I made that one moment mean something. It meant that I didn't try to learn ball skills. It meant that I actually didn't end up, therefore, developing naturally those physical movements you need to practice to get said skills. So I have left the Facebook group. So, hawks, yeah. So how do you spot somebody with neurodiversity? It's very difficult. They're a particular type of breed. But I have a feeling if you look around, you might just spot one. Because we do look like everyone. Stunning, I know, stealth-like into the community. But us 15% actually still look like all the rest of them. And so you don't spot one. We all have our own individual journey of what that looks like. And we all have specific things that we do struggle with. But obviously, the more on the trait kind of list to win that magic diagnosis means the more we're struggling in that specific area. So is it so bad if you have a diagnosis? I mean, obviously, I'm stood here. Life's fantastic. Actually, it is, to be honest. But was it? And you can hear from the journey before, it wasn't for that guy at times, although I'm really wishing I blagged my way to a concert now. I've blagged my way in through a few New Year's parties. If you go slightly later, walk in like you're knackered with a beer in your hand, they let you in. But it depends if you get the key. And what's the key? Because it's actually and I would say it is for neurodiversity, but it is also in life. If you get the support that you were hoping for, that you needed and maybe didn't know you needed, if you found your tribe, that is so important. I used to mask all the time my dyslexia, and probably right up until my 40s did I. And I thought I was going to get sacked when they found out in the NHS, and they were quite fluffy. But I was like, nah, it's like career limiting. So it depends if you feel safe, if you get the support, and you find your tribe. Your level of self-awareness, because if you don't know where you're struggling, how can you ask for help to begin with? So self-awareness is really worth it. One of my challenges to you all today is have a think about the bits that you struggle at. However, please also have a think about the things that you are good at, not just the shit things. Did you get any workarounds? Did you get help in finding like practical hints and tips? Did you get acceptance or just told you were stupid, be quiet, you're not trying hard enough? I know that my teacher, for example, said that I wasn't trying hard enough and that I needed to improve my handwriting. Still looks like a spider's walked across the paper. Ain't going to happen then. It didn't happen now. Harnessing your strengths, and also you might have other conditions that can like ramp it up a gear. Mental health issues, learning difficulties, trauma can rank it up. Anyone have COVID was fun, wasn't it? Masking, all these things. So it's a collection of things as well. So don't just think about your neurodiverse, do think about the other factors around it and what can be done. And also, you need a place where you don't try and fit in. Why do I say that? Because if you're trying to fit in, you're trying to pretend you fit in. You're trying to change who you are. You don't need to. I think you're great right now. Not later, not when you're pretending. And you need to find other people where you feel like you belong, where you can be you, where my son can have a tick because he just fancies it, where I can be excessively late all the time. I'd be very grateful. Whatever is your thing. But find where you belong, not just fitting in. Because just fitting in all the time does affect your mental health. So we all need to mask for a reason. We don't do it just because we fancy it. But you do need to also make sure that you have a place to drop the mask. Is it going to work? My little thing's not working. It's a really lovely slide, though. Yay. So here we're talking about what the things we have in place and can be in place, from about equity, empowerment and co-design. We've actually, diversity and disability is enshrined in employment law, equal opportunities and things like that. There's things about leveling the playing field, but my whole point is about equity, not equality, and you can see the difference. You don't all just want the same box. You might want a couple of boxes that go that little bit higher so that you can see over the fence. So that's the difference. You want equity and inclusion. And also in Wales, you have a neurodivergence improvement programme, and a neurodivergent allyship is also very good. That's something that everyone can do if you have an ally wherever you are. Yay. And also, we can individually make a difference, whether you're neurodivergent or an ally or in general. We can make a difference by being an inclusive approach, open to more than one way of being and thinking, because ADHD and autistic folks can drive each other nuts. They can, because one's like running out the door and the other one's going, but we had a schedule. So, we need to find a way between ourselves as well as with others. Safe space for someone to just be. And also you can ask, not assume, what would help and hinder. And there are lots and lots of superpowers that people with neurodiversity have. That, you can actually, dyscalculia can be very good with verbal skills, innovative thinking. There's creativity with your dyslexia. I don't even think straight, I like to say. You can have authenticity if you're dyslexic and ADHD. You can have hyperfocus that actually can be real power, and that can be in Tourette's, not just ADHD. Innovation is a great thing that when you can have in Tourette's syndrome. You also can have acquired neurodiversity as well, that kind of just came along the way. You might have had a head trauma or something like that. In mental health, you can show that you've got really resilience, sensory awareness, depth of thinking, and then obviously for the autistic spectrum, concentration, fine detail processing, memory. I can tell you now, I have no attention to detail at all, and I absolutely love my autistic mate who can spot a spelling mistake a mile off. Really handy. Honesty, can I just say it's a breath of fresh air. I really find that a lot of my close friends are really honest, because it means I don't have to navigate the world all the time. And then with the dyspraxia, about verbal skills. So if you don't have it in one place, you are likely to be able to compensate and get gifts in another place. nearly finished, but what I wanted to let you to know is this is what I do. I happily speak wherever you'll have me. We've got a 6-week online course. I've just got a contract to support the NHS. We're supporting those waiting for autism and ADHD assessments. And there'll just be an online version. We're thinking about if we would do an extra coaching bit on top. But for now, what I'm saying, for £10, if you wanted, and this will only be an offer for you guys, nowhere else. I genuinely mean that. We will, at these times, we will be offering those 6-week courses. They will start, dates to be confirmed. All you have to do is email me at hello@practicalwisdom, tell me you're interested, and then I will email you out when I'm a bit more organised, because I'm not like that, later on, and let you know the dates, the start dates. We would have just done it. We started the beta on 2nd of October. I'm rather excited with the NHS, and so you'll get what they get, but without the other stuff that we're doing with them. So, and then I also wanted to say, if you are neurodivergent, dare to dream, keep dreaming, be yourself, love yourself. The self-care and the self-love starts with you. When you're going to learn all these things, if you ever see me in Practical Wisdom, I want to try and help and support you be the best version you can be, to feel like you're thriving, but you also need to try and be on the team in terms of liking yourself too. And whether I see you again or not, please do that. Please remember how wonderful you all are. Thank you.